Real Enigmas and Theories is back again with another video.
Gretchen!
Oh, for God's sake, pull yourself together, man.
Severance Season 2, Episode 9 is in the books and we only have one episode to go. This episode was the setup for the finale, and we have to talk about how so many things have changed since Season 1. Helly R's arrival to MDR has really been the turning point in the Severance universe. And all of these events that have followed may be a result of the board that we haven't seen for this entire season. But I think they have been present the entire time, pulling the strings from the behind the scenes. So tonight we're here to talk about Episode 9, all of the esoteric symbolism, Milchich putting evil Hodor in his place, Gretchen and Dylan, and the fact that Gretchen thinks she's Laura Winslow with Steve and Stefan Urkel. We're going to talk about Jame, Helly, and Helena. And man, look at Mark working with Cobell and Devin. Devin totally having a change of heart towards Harmony. But first, I'd like to thank all of you for watching. And if you're new here, welcome. This video will contain spoilers if you're not caught up to Severance episode 209. So without further ado, go ahead and grab the magnifying glasses and let's cook. So you know how I do this. I'm not going to give you a chronological breakdown play by play. We've all seen the same episode, so let's get into it. Now, I have to say that my first watch was with some friends right after my live stream, and my first grade for this was an 8. It's not a bad score, but I felt like the episode didn't step up to the suspense like episode 8 of season 1. I thought about how Wong's story just ends off with her getting into some shuttle, and Dylan decides to end it by filling out the paperwork and heading off to Yggdrasil the elevator, possibly never returning. Irv hopping on a train with just his dog and an old school locomotive riding off into the distance, smiling at the dog. All of these things felt a little bit unresolved to me, and it was a bit of a downer for the episode leading up to the finale. But once I thought about that for a second, my score even dropped down to a 6.9, just shy of a 7.
Gretchen!
I mean, don't get me wrong. I did peep a lot of the symbolism in the episode, and I thought it was fire. And I started to ponder on how I wanted to dissect that first. So I sat down for a rewatch by myself, and by the time that Helly made her way to the break room to get the directions to the export hallway, I felt like Vegeta watching Goku's power level rise when he was fighting Nappa.
8,000? No, this is impossible.
And by the time the episode was over, I definitely gave it a 10. So season 2 so far for me has a 90. And I think that episode 10 will top it all off with a perfect 10 just by what I'm gauging by the episode 9 setup. And the finale is over an hour, so I think they have enough time to get everything baked in and make it great. Now, starting the episode off with Helena's day routine, Milchich and Wong at the office before everyone and their interaction, then on to Dylan and Gretchen's daily routine, and then Irv catching Burt in his crib in the morning before we even get to Mark, Devin, and Cobell. The way they walked us through those events all the way up to the evening was superb storytelling. And each one of those subplots gives us crucial information for not only the finale, but it sets us up for season 3 as well. And I think episode 10 will be an absolute room shaker. Now, the best I can do for you as far as chronology is by going through the chain of subplots, because that actually meant something. I mean, all the way down to the editing. And that's another aspect that makes this season so dope too. We started with Helly swimming in the white bathing suit with the lights under her in the pool. Now, I think that this is mirroring the lights above those on the severed and testing floors. Maybe even foreshadowing Helly going down the export hallway. I mean, at the end of the episode, we seen Jame pull up on her. I wonder if he'll take her down there. I mean, he did walk up on her while she was trying to memorize the directions. He might have even came up there from the testing floor. But we'll talk about Jame later. The white that Helena is wearing while she swims represents purity, and her in the water with the white would represent a new beginning, which is probably referencing the possible pregnancy. And this purity symbolism comes up later in the episode too. Another thing that stood out to me was the clock being on the hexagon frame, which made me think about bees. But even more interesting was the clock not having an hour hand, which clocks like this are mostly used in precision timekeeping. Regulator clocks were used by clockmakers and scientists to calibrate other clocks. A regulator clock symbolically represents a time that moves around a period. And if we're talking about pregnancy, that means a cycle or a period. The word periodis comes from Greek, and in Greek, peri means around, and hodos means pathway or a cycle, circuit, or completed course. In Latin, periodis became the term for a full stop or a sentence. So period literally meant a completed circle or path. And we also see Heli doing this in the water. So this time that moves around a period could also symbolize that time moving around a literal period, which is a small dot or a small space. Now, the smallest word in Hebrew language is yud, which has a linguistic echo to the word period, as in period. Now, yud actually represents the smallest point from which all creation begins, just like period. Now, in Kabbalistic tradition, yud is deeply esoteric because it's the starting point of the Tetragrammaton, or Yahweh, meaning that it contains the seed of divine presence. Also, Helena is the next on the throne after her father. The period marks the end of a thought, but also the beginning of potential for the next thought. This would go for Jame and Helena, and if she's pregnant, it would go for her successor as well. Even the time itself is considered a period, hence the term period of time. Now, since before the beginning of season 2, I've been pointing out all of the egg symbolism, and even before the Ortbo, I suspected that Helena would be trying to get pregnant from Mark, and the egg symbolism is what took me there. If you've been listening to my channel, I know you're tired of hearing me talk about the egg symbolism, but it just keeps coming up. I mean, what can I do? Now here we are with even more egg fertility symbolism and the choice of a specific type of plate, just like From. I've pointed out the egg symbolism in my From videos, and it strikes a familiar tone in Severance. If you watch From, go check those videos out. Now, this whole scene made me think that Helena actually lives there with her father right across from Lumen headquarters. So Jame is sitting there watching Helena eat her breakfast, and it's kind of awkward and stale. And I'm gonna be real with you. I find it quite difficult to eat my breakfast when you got a motherfucker sitting at the table making noises like this. And him saying that he wished that she'd take the eggs raw like Kier was funny, considering the fact that she'd been taking it raw for about 3 times now. Once with the Heli face and twice as a fathead Muppet at the Ortbuck. Next up, we have Eustace Wong. And we're not going to talk too much about the obvious, which is Milchich getting her ass the fuck up out of here with that snitching shit. Let's talk about how he made her crush that ring toss game. We'll talk about the esoteric aspects of it, but we've got to do a wellness check on Milchich first. I mean, at first glance, it does look like he's assisting her with the ritual sacrifice of something material, and that he was taking pleasure in seeing her destroy something she liked, but was it really that? I kind of think Milchich wanted to see that Kier effigy destroyed. Milchich is about tired of going along to get along, and we don't know much about his motivation as of yet, but we can assume that he was likely raised by Lumen or attended one of their indoctrination centers. No doubt he was loyal at one point, or we could assume that Milchich is an inside man for someone, and he works hard to maintain his employment, and he works his way up to become more valuable to another cause. We don't know. Either way, Milchich is tired of the bullshit, and we see that later with Evil Hodor. I think that Wong crushing that game is possibly what Milchich could be planning, and this perhaps could be symbolic of him taking down Lumen. Now, before we move on to Dylan and Gretchen, I have to knock out the hidden symbolism in that scene. It ties directly to episode 7 in 2 different ways, the bloodletting and the dentistry stuff. But check this out. The ring toss game is barber pole symbolism with the red and white stripes along with that blue background. Kier with his hands clasped together symbolizes many things, but we'll just talk about a few. First of all, the clasped hands in mystery school traditions means the taming of the lower nature, desires, or impulses. And we know Kier be all about that. It also represents binding or being tied to submission or a higher power, like when you clasp your hands at prayer. Clasping your hands together signifies submitting to a higher power. Now, the bloodletting and the barber pole symbolize something else from episode 7 as well, and that's the dental procedures that's done on Emma. Long ago, barbers were who performed such tasks like bloodletting and dental procedures. The red and white are also symbolic of the cross of the Knights Templar. Barber surgeons were formally recognized in the 14th and 13th century, but their origins lie in the informal battlefield and monastic care, which overlapped with Templar operations. Post-Templar medical traditions filtered into the evolving barber-surgeon guild system, especially after the Templars were disbanded and absorbed into other professions. This ties directly to Kier because all Templar knights were trained in basic medical procedures to help their fallen soldiers on the battlefield. And Kier was a battlefield doctor himself. Now, as I told you before, I believe that Kier is a figurehead, whether he's real or fake, and the actual Lumen organization predates Kier by hundreds of years. Kier posing with his hands clasped in a submission and the rings going around his hands to bind his hands is suggesting that he submits to a higher power. I've talked about this in previous videos about Lumen's true origins, and I have a few theories on that you might find interesting. We're talking ancient occult and Masonic orders, bloodletting, carnivals and circuses, the connection to Oddfellow orphanages, and more. Go check those videos out.
I kissed your innie.
What do you mean you kissed my innie? What you saying? You went under the covers while I was sleeping and you kissed my belly button? Is that the innie you talking about? Did you put some syrup in it and dip a waffle in it?
I wasn't going to say that.
I'm not understanding what you're telling me right now.
Now let's get to Dylan and Gretchen, who simply put are mirroring Mark and Helly. You have the non-severed woman who's seeing the innie and married to the outie, and the severed woman whose innie and outie both slept with innie Mark. I mean, look at Dylan when he gets on the elevator. He's sitting right in the spot where his head ends up below Kier's hand. But when he stands up, you can see that he's in the place of the figure that represents Mark. A bit of symbolism. Peep how Gretchen says Asher picked up the kids, which is a nod to Ashereth, who was worshipped in the temples alongside Baal. And this would be our weekly dose of goat symbolism pretty much. But this is the craziest part for me. Even though Gretchen is dealing with the same man's body, what she's doing is cheating because of the connection being made with someone who's technically not Dylan. And this brings up so much to talk about on a philosophical level, but the argument could definitely be made that she isn't in the wrong if it still is his actual body. I mean, she would still be sharing herself with her husband's body and not nobody else's body. And I would say that the body is her husband's body and not the any Dylan's body because her husband came first. So it's his body. She's probably sitting there like,
yeah, I know it's not you, but it is you, so it's not all that serious.
Just wait until he finds out about Milchich. Either way, I think that Dylan has now found a good reason for reintegration. And that would actually be a solution for his situation, being that he doesn't have to go save his wife from the testing floor. Shit, she's already there. She been making out with the innie already. Like I said before, same glizzy. Now let's get to Irv and Burt, who I could tell you right now, both of them been lying their asses off. Pause. First, let's talk about a few things real quick. The dog. I knew that Gemma was lying about those cards to Mark when she said that the one card meant something about ego death. I think those cards are training technique exercises. The card with the dog is showing you how to control a dog and put him under some sort of hypnotism, because Radar is clearly under some sort of canine hypnosis. Look at how he turns his head. Let's not forget that Burt has been working for Lumen for about 20 years and most likely was there when that original set of cards came to be. Another thing is, where in the hell is Irv coming from? It appears to be early morning, and I showed in another video that Irv has more than one apartment. So let's get to the lies that they tell him. Burt reads Irv's notes about himself, and Irv claims to not believe that anymore. Bro, what are you talking about? He's reading your note. Like, what changed? You went to dinner with us and all of a sudden you don't think I'm with Lumen anymore? Come on, bro. And then Burt pretty much confirms that it's true by forcing him to take a ride and flat out telling him that he used to take people to locations, but he didn't know what would happen to him. And I think that's a lie too, but here we go. So now, Irv, that you say you don't believe that Burt is with Lumen anymore, now that you see the dude in your crib, reading your shit, hypnotizing your dog, do you now believe he's with Lumen again? What's up? He pretty much told you he's with Lumen. Irv gets to the train station with Burt and act like he's ready to start a relationship with a married man. Not just any married man, but a man who you know is indeed working for Lumen as a goon, who lied to you at the door when you last saw him and just showed up at your crib and hypnotized the shit out of your dog. And you sitting there telling this dude, I'm ready? You ready for what? I think Irv is playing a dangerous game of letting the enemy get really close before striking, because we know that Irv is working with somebody. He's got notes and addresses of severed employees. He obviously left those documents for somebody to find, because we also saw him getting rid of the paintings, probably so they wouldn't know exactly how much he knew. And I still think that Irv was reintegrated, and he even indicates this to Burt when he states he's ready, which is an actual continuation of the conversation that they had when they was on the severed floor in that room full of plants. And I also think that Burt never was severed and was playing an act the whole time, because if that wasn't him down there on the severed floor, where does he get these feelings from? Why are you giving Irv a chance to get away when you clearly set him up with evil Hodor to invade his crib while you was at dinner? Even lied to him at the door about Fields letting it slip about how long he worked there. I think Burt and Irv are playing each other. One has never been severed and the other has been reintegrated. Irv's reasoning for letting Burt think that he's not on to him and wanting him to be with him is his way of trying to find out more intel on the dealings of Burt. Irv's notes indicate he knows who Burt works with, and judging by the wording that they used, we know that Irv was actually investigating abductions and people disappearing. We do know that Irv is working with someone because he called him on the phone. And I just don't think he'd just leave all his shit and take Radar on a train ride off into the sunset. Now, Burt's reasoning for letting Irv go is to track him back to whoever he's working with and maybe root out the whole operation that's against Lumen. Lumen no doubt knows that Irv is working with someone, being that Burt was spying on him at that payphone. I'm gonna tell you, trust that Irv and Burt's story is not over. And I wouldn't even be surprised if we see any Irv again in season 3. I hope we do get to see where this subplot is going, and I hope we haven't seen the last of these two masters at work. Both Irv and Burt seem like the type of guys to be playing chess, not checkers, when it comes to shit like this. So I don't think it's over for them. We might even see something in the finale, who knows? Now, before we get to Jame, Harmony, and Mark, I want to comment on how Milchich dismantled evil Hodor and had me wishing to see them throw hands. Milchich brought that Cobell energy and let evil Hodor know what time it was when speaking to a manager of the severed floor. He also blasted him by letting him know that it was his fault not being on top of his job. It was nice to see Milchich bounce off the bullshit and verbally smack sense into a superior. But what will the cost of this be? I wonder if now that Milchich has gotten Mark to agree to returning to work, will evil Hodor see the Milchich being removed while Mark returns? We do know that any Mark is now at the birthing retreat with Cobell and Devin, and I'm sure that he'll be instructed to stall the completion of Cold Harbor, especially being that Outie Mark knows that if he completes Cold Harbor, Gemma dies. I think Gemma will be sent on some sort of kamikaze mission like Mark implies in the first episode with that fake Mark W letter about blowing up Milchich. I could be wrong, but I think we'll get the revealing during the finale. At least I hope so. Like I said, I think they're making sleeper agents. Now, let's talk about Cobell in episode 8 for a quick second. We've been seeing the car that looks like hers in the title credits in the icy water. And we see that Cobell has left Salt's neck and her car behind. And if that is her car in the title credits, how does it get in the water if that even happens? And if not, why show that to us? Is it possible that we'll see someone else drive Cobell's car back to Kier? Maybe to try to help her? I don't know. Could it be young Ether Hampton? coming to save the day, coming to act like a cavalry or some type of situation? Or could it be Sissy having a change of heart, saying, hey, you know, my niece made this shit. I think I should do what I can to help her. I don't know. She did seem too far gone, but I did kind of think that she might have been the mother of Helena for some reason. I don't know. We'll see. And honestly, I didn't think that Devon's plan of going to the birthing retreat was going to work, but it turns out that I was wrong. But them getting into the birthing cottages and it working wasn't even the craziest part of this shit. The wildest shit was how they got in by telling the guard that Devon was one of James's, meaning that she was carrying a baby for James. And I thought that he was the old dirty bastard because he told Helena to take the eggs raw. But it turns out he's like him in more ways than one.
Looking for a new girl for babies then?
All right.
Turns out that Jame likes it raw too. Pause. No wonder Helena felt like she had a bunch of siblings all over the world. She probably does. Jame Eagan is on his King Joffrey shit.
I always assumed that you had sex with your bathers. I know I do.
Bro is really out here looking like Jarrell's evil brother trying to repopulate Krypton. We can see that his crib is right across the field from the Lumen building, and he shows up on the Sever floor with Helly on some creepy shit. And I think that when we see the elevator arrow light up, I think that's him coming from the testing floor. And I'm willing to bet that he has access to all of that shit from his crib. What if Jane be down there getting them little striptease dances from the waffle party? Or he just down there smashing severed women and their Audis have to go somewhere like the birthing retreat to have the baby? I mean, why else would that excuse work with the guards? I wonder if that's how the woman mentioned in season 1 got pregnant on the severed floor. And this brings even more questions. If Jame Eagan has multiple children running around, then who is Helena's mother? Where are the other kids and how many of them are there? What are the age ranges? Is Evil Hodor one of them? How does Cobell even know about this? And was she a part of seeing this area of Severance through at some point? Here's some more questions. Now that she has proof of her IP being used by Lumen, what is she planning to do? And how does helping Mark fit into that? Maybe stalling Lumen is her goal, but why? How does getting fired change your mind about seeing your creation complete the course? Because if that was your motivation then, what is your motivation now? So there you have it. Some hidden meaning, esoteric symbolism, some history, character analysis, theories, and a little bit of humor. And if you like this video, go ahead and do all that dope YouTube stuff for me by tapping the screen a couple times, by liking, sharing, and getting ready to hop down in the comments to get the conversation started. And if you're not subscribed, hopefully this video will be the video that makes you do it. Anyway, just a little something to think about while we wait on the next episode. That's all for my video today. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.